According to ancient lore, Adam had two wives, the second being Eve. This idea arises from the two distinct accounts of creation found in Genesis. In one account, where the Creator is referred to as Yehovah Elohim, or Yahweh Elohim, Adam is created first, and then Eve is later formed from Adam's rib after he is put to sleep. The earlier account in the Bible refers to the Creator as Elohim, meaning the heavenly host. Genesis states, Elohim created man in his image. In the image of Elohim, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Elohim blessed them and said, Be fruitful and multiply, fill the land and subdue it, rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and every creature that moves on the ground. Later in chapter 5 it reads, This is the book of the Chronicles of Adam. On the day that Elohim created man, he made him in the likeness of Elohim. He created them male and female. He blessed them and named them man on the day they were created. Ancient scholars analyzing these two creation accounts concluded that Adam must have had two wives. The first was created from the earth alongside him, while the second was formed from Adam's rib as he slept. But who was this first wife, and what happened to her? According to a secret tradition, her name was Lilith. Being created from the same earth as Adam, Lilith demanded equality. She refused to be subservient to Adam and would not accept a submissive role. The alphabet of Ben Sirah shares an account of Lilith asserting her independence during intimacy, refusing to take a position of inferiority. Adam insisted on his dominance, leading to conflict. In frustration, Lilith untied her hair, spoke the secret name of Yahweh, and grew wings to escape Eden, never to return. Adam, heartbroken, pleaded with Yahweh to bring Lilith back and make her compliant. In response, Yahweh sent 3 angels to convince her to return. They found Lilith by the Red Sea, where she had embraced her freedom and aligned herself with demons. Rejecting their pleas, Lilith chose independence and vowed to become the mother of demon offspring. When the angels threatened her children, Lilith declared that she would prey on newborn human babies unless their mothers invoked the protection of the 3 angels. From that moment, she became known as the slayer of abandoned children and a presence in desolate places. Often depicted with the wings and talons of a bird of prey, she was linked to the screech owl. The story of Lilith fascinated Cabalistic scholars during the Middle Ages. They believed the seeds of her rebellion were sown at creation. They believed that while Adam was formed from dry earth, Lilith came from wet earth or mud, as suggested in Genesis 2:6. A mist rose up from the earth, and it watered the entire surface of the ground. According to these scholars, this mist was the work of the serpent. As a result, while Adam was brought to life by Yahweh's breath, Lilith was animated by Lucifer, representing 2 opposing forces within humanity from the start. The Zohar, a foundational text of Cabalistic thought, suggested that Lilith returned to the Garden of Eden as the serpent who tempted Eve. Inspired by the spirit of Lucifer, she played a key role in humanity's fall. This powerful narrative has captured the imagination of artists for centuries. Lilith is depicted as the serpent in a carving on the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, and also appears in Michelangelo's frescoes on the Sistine Chapel ceiling. But what if we examined Lilith's story through a different lens? Long before her association with the Garden of Eden, Lilith's origins can be traced back to ancient Sumerian mythology. She first appears in the epic Gilgamesh and the Hulupu tree, a tale that predates Genesis by over 5 centuries. In this story, Lilith, referred to as the Dark Maid, resides in the trunk of a tree alongside a snake and a bird. The tree is planted and cared for by the goddess Inanna in a sacred garden near the Euphrates River. Inanna, the goddess of love and fertility, is associated with grain, dates, wine, and later parallels the Hebrew goddess Asherah and the Shekinah. Lilith was known as the Hand of Inanna, aiding women in childbirth and nurturing infants. As a lunar deity, her symbols included the owl, the serpent, the tree, and the crossroads. In Jewish texts like the Talmud, she is described as a charming woman with long, wavy hair, while in Arab tradition she was revered as the Holy Lady, mother to the jinn. Sumerian art portrays her as a winged, nude woman with owl-like feet standing on two lions and flanked by owls. So how did Lilith, once a figure of wisdom and protection, become vilified as a demoness and destroyer of children? Her transformation into a symbol of fear and darkness can be traced to her defiance. Lilith refused to be subservient, not to Adam, not to Yahweh, not to anyone. Her independence and refusal to conform led her to demonization, echoing the treatment of other figures like Lucifer. In her case, the result was a campaign of propaganda that redefined her identity. The story of Lilith carries a timeless lesson. Think for yourself, question authority when necessary, and stand firm in your beliefs, even when facing opposition. The first creation myth created an androgynous Adam Kadmon, and the second creation myth was the demiurge putting Adam to sleep and extracting the female. Lilith could be seen as the original part of the androgynous figure that refused to be separated. According to the author Michael Howard, in the folklore and poetry of Old England, the moon was once called the lantern of Lilith. In esoteric astrology, Lilith assumes another aspect as the black moon, a mysterious element associated with the asteroid that early 20th century astrologer Safariel claimed to have discovered orbiting between the Earth and the moon. In this context, Lilith is sometimes referred to as the Old Moon, said to have existed before our current lunar satellite. Astrologically, Lilith represents one's shadow self, the hidden side of the personality that drives desires and compels us into cycles of passion, chaos, and even self-destruction. Yet her role isn't entirely menacing. She serves as a guide through the darker corners of the human psyche, urging us to confront fears and navigate emotional turbulence. On a deeper level, Lilith serves as a teacher, guiding us toward self-awareness and growth. Lilith's message is reminiscent of Luciferian wisdom, urging enlightenment through self-discovery, no matter how uncomfortable the journey may be at times. Lilith also takes on the role of a muse, inspiring poets, artists, and writers throughout history. She is the dark lady who fuels creativity, while her influence is double-edged, both a blessing and a curse. Her darker side manifests in myths of madness and death. She has been depicted as the Mara of the night, dwelling at the top of a tree filled with the bones of dead poets, her awakening bringing destruction. Astronomically, her name, meaning devil or demon in Arabic, has connections to death by hanging, decapitation, drowning, and poisoning. She is the death that comes on the night wind. She's been seen as the wife of the angel of death, embodying a fearsome yet powerful aspect of the feminine principle. She is simultaneously linked to Binah, the Black Mother of the Bitter Sea, and even to the Blessed Virgin Mary, merging the lines between light and dark, creation and destruction. Lilith as a figure embodies the duality of the feminine principle, complex, powerful, and enigmatic. She is a force to be respected and understood, a guide through shadows, and a reminder of the depth of human experience. Whether feared as a demon or revered as the symbol of wisdom, Lilith's story endures as a profound element of spiritual and cosmic exploration. One of the most fascinating yet often misunderstood aspects of Lilith's legend is the belief that she created a race of demons through encounters with sleeping humans. The connection between fallen beings and the fairy realm is echoed in many writings, such as those of R.J. Stewart. He recounts that when Lucifer fell to earth, he brought with him beings from the fairy realm long before humanity's creation. These beings became the fairy races, often described as the angels of the mother below. Stewart elaborates on this concept of the three-in-one alliance, a spiritual effort to unite the orders of human, fairy, and angelic existence that were separated during the fall. Arthurian myths weave similar threads into their stories, particularly the legend of Merlin. His birth and later seduction by Nimue, the servant of the Lady of the Lake, reflect the esoteric concept of unions between humans and fairies. While Christian narratives often describe Merlin as the offspring of a demon and a nun, stripping away their religious layer reveals the union of an angelic being and a human priestess. Geoffrey of Monmouth, a historical chronicler, describes Merlin's father as a spirit being of extraordinary beauty, one of the race that exists between the moon and the earth, part human, part angelic. This race, often called incubus demons, were said to interact with mortal women. Merlin's seduction by Nimue in his old age is another example of this fairy union. Though Christian interpretations portray his downfall negatively, others see it as a transformative act of redemption. Nimue, the maiden of the earth, learns the stellar wisdom of Merlin, while Merlin gains her earthly wisdom. Together they form a cosmic marriage, ascending toward the stars and uplifting humanity with them. Stories of close encounters with fairies during witch trials suggest that humans may have gained hidden knowledge, such as herbal lore and psychic abilities, through their interactions with the fairy. Even in death, Merlin's story remains deeply connected to its magical roots. His imprisonment in a glass tower, sometimes described as an observatory, ties him to the ancient doctrines and identifies him as one of the Watchers, beings associated with divine wisdom. Over the centuries, patriarchal narratives have sought to defame legends like those of Lilith and Lucifer, portraying their stories and the concept of unions with the elven race as evil or diabolical. Yet these interactions have played a vital role in humanity's evolution, both spiritually and materially. Far from being malevolent, these connections have preserved the flame of wisdom and knowledge passed down by the ancient gods, guiding humanity's progress through the ages. Lilith was not in the Bible. She's mentioned in other sources like the Zohar, but these were based on the assumption that since there are two creation stories in the Bible, in the first creation story, the wife of Adam was Lilith, and the second creation story is how after Lilith left, God gave Adam a new wife. The Bible mentions none of that in Genesis 1:27. In the image of Elohim, he created him. Male and female, he created them. In that chapter, there is no proper name Adam. It's Ha-Adam, which just means human. When it says he created man in his image, male and female created he them, many people interpret that as being God created a man and a woman. But it doesn't really say that. It says that he created man who was male and female. Now it was the singular child. There was one begotten child of the infinite, and it was an androgynous being. It was a perfect being. It didn't need to procreate. It didn't need anything. It had no function other than perfection. Later in that book, it tells this creature to multiply and to grow. It's talking about not an earthly procreation because there was no earth like we understand it yet. This was before the fall. This was paradise. In that fourth dimensional plane of existence, there are no bodies to procreate. The way that you are fruitful and multiply is by extending thought. If you think in terms of how this child of the universe, this Ha-Adam, was created, it was created out of dust. But it wasn't the dust of the earth. It was divine substance, or Shekinah. The infinite gave us the same ability to create as it creates. We are an idea in the mind of the infinite, and then we can have creations that are extensions of our own thinking through this magic dust, through this Shekinah, through this divine substance that exists not on a physical plane, because there was no physical plane like we understand it yet. That didn't happen till later. So we are one being. And that's how we remain, according to esoteric thought. We all remain there. We're still there. Nothing ever happened, except that we fell asleep. So we are all self-contained beings that are extensions of light from a central star. There is no division. There is no separation. Male and female are what we are. Male and female created he them. Then it says, Elohim blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply, fill the land and subdue it, rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and every creature that moves on the ground. In other words, we were given everything that we require to be happy. We were meant to multiply, but remember, this was heaven. Earth, as we understand it here, is not the same world as heaven, where the Holy Child of God rests and resides in harmony with its holy family. We were to extend ourselves. We were to create. We are creative beings. We were created to create, because in the very beginning, it said that the Elohim created man in his image. So we're just like the infinite. The only difference between us and the infinite is it created us and we didn't create it. And then later in chapter 5, it reads, this is the book of the Chronicles of Adam. On the day that Elohim created man, he made him in the likeness of Elohim. Restating what we just said. It's not called Adam as a proper noun yet. That's not mentioned yet. This is Ha-Adam. Then in the next chapter, there's a whole new ballgame going on. Now there's no more Elohim creating Ha-Adam in their image. It's Yahweh Elohim creating man out of the dust of the earth, because he's named Adam. And Adam, not Ha-Adam, Adam means of the earth. What happens in this next chapter is that Yahweh Elohim puts Adam to sleep. Adam doesn't fall asleep like some people say. It doesn't say that. He puts him to sleep. He causes him to go to sleep. Yahweh Elohim causes Adam to go to sleep. And from there, extracts the feminine from Adam, separates into two genders. This is the creation of separation, but Yahweh Elohim doesn't call this female Eve. Adam does later, after the fall. Adam names her himself. But now we have two separate beings. No longer are they one. They are two separate beings. In the Zohar, it states that Lilith didn't want to be inferior to Adam, didn't feel she was. They were created from the same dust. And that same dust from that first chapter is divine substance. And she's right, because they were one. She didn't like being separate from Adam. She's very clear on that. She doesn't like being separate from Adam. She wanted Yahweh Elohim to force Adam to be her partner again, but not under him. And what this is telling us is that Lilith is the extracted female that doesn't want to be extracted. She didn't want to be separated. Eve later was then named mother of the mortal race. If you look at it esoterically, Eve and Lilith are the same thing. It's just they function differently. Lilith functions as the original soul of the universe, the original child of the infinite, longing to be at one with Adam again, longing to be together. And if they can't be together, she doesn't want to play this game. She's not going to be part of what's coming. So she just leaves. After the fall, Eve is the intuitive part of this pair. The serpent is trying to get Eve to wake up. That's where the fruit comes in, because the serpent's idea is you don't want to stay asleep. You don't want to stay asleep in this. This is not a real place that you are in. You're in a dream. You're in a nightmare, and you need to wake up because there's a journey that you have to take to awaken to who you really are. And when you awaken to who you really are, you're going to realize that you're still in heaven at one with yourself. Lilith and Adam together are the Ha-Adam of that first chapter of Genesis. It's only the split that causes Eve, who is a replacement for or a substitute for Lilith, who's not going to play this game. Lilith is too wise to play this game. The ancient Hebrews were very good, just like the ancient Greeks were, of using their stories to explain away some things. Lilith was a very convenient way for them to explain why there were stillborn babies or why there were miscarriages. It's because she's a demon and she's doing that to you, or why men have nocturnal emissions. Back in the day, they needed the population to thrive, so things like masturbation were frowned upon because that's perfectly good seed that you can use to further our tribe, to strengthen our tribe. And so they would scare people by saying Lilith is there waiting to create a demon out of your nocturnal emission, or if you masturbate or if you spill your seed, they called it. They used that as a type of propaganda to scare men into only procreating so that their tribes could thrive and get bigger. They superimposed that on this whole concept of Lilith. And so Lilith became demonized. Remember, the serpent went to Eve, not Adam, because the female part of the Holy Child of God is the intuitive part. Once it's separated, the masculine part of the Holy Child of the Infinite is the intellectual part. In reality, each and every one of us have both, where each and every one of us is still androgynous regardless of our bodies. That's how souls are. So we have an intellectual side and an intuitive side, but the intuitive side is symbolized by the feminine in these stories. So the intuitive side of the feminine, which goes along with what she's supposed to do, is symbolized by Eve. She's one that subjugates her intuition. And remember, she wasn't called Eve until after the fall. He didn't name her Eve until after the fall. So to say that Eve ate the fruit and gave it to Adam, maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe that was Lilith that did that. And it wasn't until after the fall that he named her Eve to keep her in her place, because Lilith flew off and did her own thing, was not going to be part of this. Remember, Lilith never became part of the earth after the fall. She never was involved in that drama, according to the stories. She flew away. There were angels that begged her to come back, and she said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm doing my thing. And so, of course, that was something that was demonized. So this demonic side of Lilith is a product of the separation. And the separation happened on so many different fronts. This story of Lilith was concocted based on the gap between the first creation story in Genesis and the second creation story in Genesis. And the story of Lucifer is in that gap as well. Because according to the ancient story of Lucifer, that's non-biblical, Lucifer's fall happened before that second creation story. Lucifer was primed and ready to redeem and atone and had his job all ready to go. The serpent in the Garden of Eden was that Prometheus-type figure, Lucifer rescuing the Holy Child from this eternal sleep. And so everything that came after they were expelled from this place that people assume was the heaven of the first chapter, but in reality was not, this false Eden of being asleep. Going into that third dimension to awaken ourselves, that's when Eve was named Eve. After all that happened, she was not called Eve. She was just the female side of the child. Eve, as the mother of the physical human race, started after the expulsion from this so-called Garden of Eden in the second creation myth. But from an esoteric perspective, nothing ever happened. That first creation myth is still the truth. The rest of it is the story of the falling asleep of humanity, the splitting of the mind of humanity, and now the return. This whole idea of going into physical incarnation is for the purpose of waking back up fully, rather than staying in this state of suspended animation from that garden in the second creation myth. So there's two very distinct worlds in the two myths. The real world with the real creator and the real child of the infinite, which is one. And then this second place where we were supposed to stay asleep and never wake up. And then we have the serpent awakening the holy child through the intuitive side, which was the feminine, whom after is expelled from this false Eden, Adam calls Eve. Once the separation is healed, Eve and Lilith become one again. And when they become one again, so do Adam and Lilith become one again, because they never became two. They never were separated. They're just asleep in the original heaven, waiting to awaken. And all of the adventures that we're having in this three-dimensional universe are part of a nightmare that we are awakening from. And that was the whole point of the serpent, getting us out of there. At least we've stopped administering the anesthesia, so it may seem like it's going to take many lifetimes to awaken, but we're on our way. And so from that point of view, Lilith is holding the space for that awakening because she refused to be a part of this dimension. She refused to be a part of any of this story that came afterwards, according to those old myths. That's another way of looking at Lilith, is she's not a separate entity. She is how the female aspect of the divine child of God responded to the separation. And she said, no, I'm not going to have anything to do with any of it. I am awaiting the time in which we awaken to our oneness. She's a demon from the point of view of the third dimension because she's not playing the game. A lot of those old myths used Lilith to explain away problems. Lilith is simply a way to explain why things are so awful here. And the reason why things are so awful here is because she's not here. She's not asleep. If she was here, we would wake up. But she won't come here. She will not be a part of the illusion because she's outside of the illusion. So we have to awaken to her in order to help us wake up. Because remember, she is the part of us that was extracted from the masculine. And it's the feminine side of humanity that's in charge of the awakening, not the masculine. That's why the serpent went to the woman, not to the man. So it's just another way of looking at Lilith. So many different ways to look at Lilith. Nobody's right or wrong. Remember, she's not biblical, but a wonderful symbol. I know some people believe in an actual deity named Lilith or an actual demon named Lilith, and they pray to her and invoke her, and that's fine. You can do that. But that's not how I see her at all. I see her as a symbol for something within each and every one of us, this awakened feminine side of us that's awaiting our awakening. Because her desire is to be one with Adam. And when she's one with Adam, then Eve is one with her. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Until next time, blessed be.